The sun rises over Washington, D.C., its light falling softly on the marble pillars of the Capitol and the distant walls of the Pentagon. On the surface, America seems calm. But beneath that calm, a quiet fracture is forming, one that could change the course of the nation's history. For the first time in generations, the United States faces a moment when its own military might stand up and say, "No," to the commander-in-chief. This is not a story about foreign wars or distant enemies. It's a story about America itself, about the meaning of loyalty and what happens when obedience collides with the Constitution. The man at the center of it all is Donald J. Trump, a figure defined by defiance, adored by millions, despised by millions more. To his followers, he is the embodiment of strength and rebellion. To his critics, he is a man who would bend any rule to maintain control. And now that relentless will has collided with the wall of the American military establishment. In the quiet state of Illinois, far from the chaos of Washington, an invisible battle has begun. According to reports, Donald Trump sought to federalize the Illinois National Guard, to seize control of a state's military forces without the consent of its governor. It was a move that shocked legal scholars, political observers, and even the soldiers themselves. When asked, the office of Governor J.B. Pritzker stated clearly, "No federal officials have contacted us. The situation in Illinois does not require military deployment." That one sentence signaled more than a disagreement. It was resistance, the kind America hasn't seen in decades. For the first time, a state had told the President of the United States, "This order is not lawful, and we will not obey." To understand the magnitude of this, we must return to the core of American military ethics. Every soldier, every sailor, every Marine, every airman takes an oath, not to a man, not to a party, but to the Constitution of the United States. That oath binds them to obey lawful orders, but it also obligates them to disobey unlawful ones. As former Army JAG officer Glenn Kirshner explains, "As soldiers, we're taught to obey lawful commands, but we're equally taught that refusing an unlawful order isn't rebellion, it's duty. Nobody said defending the Constitution was easy." Those words now echo louder than ever. In theory, it's simple. Obey the law, reject tyranny. But in practice, for the men and women in uniform, that line is razor thin. To disobey an order is to risk everything. Your rank, your freedom, your future. Yet to obey a lawless command could mean betraying the very nation you swore to protect. Donald Trump has never been a man bound by limits. During his presidency, he repeatedly stretched the powers of his office to their breaking point. He had federalized the California National Guard without Governor Gavin Newsom's approval, deploying troops to Los Angeles under claims of restoring order. He attempted to send troops to Portland, Oregon, during protests, only to be blocked by the courts. Judges ruled that his deployments failed to meet the three thresholds required by law: no rebellion, no invasion, no failure of local governance. Each time, Trump's orders were rejected as unlawful. Yet each time, he pressed forward, testing the resilience of the American system. For him, authority wasn't something to balance, it was something to wield. And now, Illinois became the latest battlefield in that ongoing war between power and principle. Inside the Pentagon, confusion spread like a virus. Some officials reportedly received communications from the White House instructing them to prepare to act under federal command, despite the absence of legal authorization. Inside the Illinois National Guard headquarters, officers hesitated, unsure whether to follow Washington's lead or their own state government. Their phones buzzed. Orders contradicted each other. The law said one thing, the president demanded another. And somewhere between those two realities stood the conscience of every officer wearing the uniform. They knew what the Constitution required. They also knew who the commander-in-chief was. And between those two loyalties, they had to choose. In a move that may one day be remembered as historic, the Illinois National Guard responded directly to the Department of Defense. The situation in Illinois does not require military involvement. Those words, calm and measured, carried the weight of a revolution. It was not rebellion for rebellion's sake, it was obedience to the law, a refusal to comply with an order that crossed the boundary between lawful authority and tyranny. The statement from Governor Pritzker's office followed swiftly. "The National Guard remains under my authority unless there is a national emergency. There isn't one here." With that, the line was drawn. Illinois had declared that the law would not bend to politics, and that the military would not be used as a pawn in a president's game. But Trump was not a man to accept defiance quietly. Within hours, the backlash began. Conservative commentators accused Illinois of mutiny. Loyalists labeled the governor treasonous. Rumors swirled that the White House was considering disciplinary measures against state leadership. Trump himself took to social media, promising that those who disobey will pay a price. Behind the bluster, however, there was panic. Because for the first time since taking office, Trump was facing something he couldn't control: men and women in uniform who simply refused to follow him into lawlessness. Inside the ranks, the tension was palpable. Soldiers whispered among themselves, "What if the order comes to us? Do we follow it?" Some remembered Trump's earlier statements, his suggestion that the enemy is within, that American cities could serve as military training grounds. Those words haunted them. For decades, the U.S. military's greatest pride had been its loyalty to civilian leadership. But now, that leadership itself stood accused of betraying the republic it was meant to serve. Then came the confirmation from Trump's former Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper. In his memoir, Esper revealed that Trump once asked whether the military could shoot protesters in the leg to teach them a lesson. The words were chilling. They revealed a mindset not of restraint but domination. And to many in uniform, it became clear that Illinois' resistance was not an isolated act. It was the beginning of a reckoning. Within 24 hours, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration. The charges were clear: abuse of federal power, violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, breach of the 10th Amendment. For constitutional scholars, it was a thunderclap. The suit argued that Trump's attempt to federalize the state's National Guard without cause or consent violated centuries of law. If Trump proceeded, the filing warned, he would plunge the United States into an unprecedented constitutional crisis, one that could rival Watergate in scale and the Civil War in consequence. As legal documents filled the courts and news anchors filled the airwaves, a quieter reflection spread among the soldiers. They thought back to their oath: to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That oath did not come with conditions. It did not say, unless it's inconvenient. It did not say, unless it's the president. It simply said, defend. For the men and women who wore the uniform, the Illinois moment became a mirror, forcing them to look at what they truly served: the flag or the man, the law or the order, the Constitution or the command. And in that reflection, something began to shift. Across bases, barracks, and offices, quiet conversations grew into a shared realization. Obedience without legality is not patriotism. It is submission. As night fell over Chicago, the city was peaceful. There were no riots, no rebellion, no breakdown of civil order, only the hum of life continuing as normal. Yet 700 miles away, in the corridors of the White House, the atmosphere was electric. Trump's advisors met in secret, exploring how to bypass Illinois entirely. Some proposed invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807, an old and dangerous law that allows a president to deploy troops if a state government fails to maintain order. It was the same act used by presidents during the Civil War, during segregation, during national collapse. To invoke it now would be to declare that Illinois was in open rebellion, something clearly false, but politically useful. Legal experts warned that such a move could shatter the balance between state and federal power overnight. If Trump invoked the Insurrection Act against a peaceful state, every governor in America would have reason to fear that their National Guard could be seized at will. The fragile line between democracy and dictatorship would blur beyond recognition. And so, America waited. The courts moved slowly, the headlines screamed loudly, and in between those two worlds stood the people, the soldiers, the governors, the citizens, caught between law and loyalty. What happened in Illinois was not just a standoff, it was a message. It said, the military is not a weapon of politics. The Constitution is not optional. And even in the age of strongmen, there are still those who remember that the true strength of America lies not in obedience, but in conscience. As the lights of Washington flickered late into the night, a question lingered in the silence of the Pentagon's halls. What happens next time? What if another order comes, one clearer, louder, more commanding? Will others stand as Illinois did, or will they yield? For now, no one knows. But one thing is certain, something in America has changed. The oath has been tested, the law has spoken, and for the first time in years, the military has whispered back, "No,